Push.
For the first 29 years of his life, Scott Chant lived for every moment.
We never saw him. He was always out with friends. He loved being outdoors, loved surfing, kayaking.
But a tick bite in northern New South Wales turned his world upside down. The symptoms of Lyme disease, like extreme pain and fatigue, started almost immediately.
Yeah, it was huge because everything that he loved to do, he couldn't do anymore. He couldn't go outside because of the medication he was on. It made him more susceptible to burning from the sun. He didn't even have the energy to do it, though, if he wanted to.
Lyme disease is spread by ticks in the US, Europe and Asia. But there's no proof ticks which spread Lyme exist in Australia. So doctors are reluctant to diagnose it.
One of the worst times was he was really sick, and I think we had a resident psychologist sit down with the family and just say, look, stop encouraging this, stop telling him he's sick.
That was after the second suicide attempt.
You don't know how to react to that. It's sort of, you don't know if you have any hope at all.
Testing for Lyme disease is notoriously difficult, often delivering inconsistent results. Yet hundreds of Australians, like Scott, are convinced they have it. And last year, a Senate inquiry was established to find out if Australian knowledge is outdated.
These people deserve an answer. They deserve to have help. They're our fellow Australians.
Scott made this desperate submission to the inquiry in January.
It was the most horrific feeling I've ever felt. I didn't know it was humanly possible to feel like this, and it was getting worse and worse with each passing day.
A month later, he took his own life. Now the future of the inquiry is unclear because the senators who'd been driving it have been voted out.
Some people present in hospital with terrible illness as soon as they say, I believe I've got Lyme or Lyme-like illness. They're ridiculed, they're denigrated, they're vilified, they're treated, worse than a dog with mange.
11 years ago, Mel Pyme made her living as a fire dancer. Then she got sick, and the pain, convulsions, migraines and fatigue took too much of a toll.
Yeah, dancing's everything to me, sorry. I still consider myself to be a dancer now, even though I haven't been able to move or do anything. I just kind of live, eat and breathe it. It's just has been my whole reason for being.
Mel was only diagnosed when she sent her blood to the US for testing. She'd seen dozens of doctors in Australia who didn't take her seriously.
They think you're crazy, you're an idiot, or you're some kind of alien, or that your problems are just too complex and they can't deal with them.
Mel's raising money for treatment in Germany. She wants the inquiry to finish its work, so one day people like her may be able to get care closer to home.
I hope that this inquiry will continue on to give all of us Lyme sufferers here in Australia hope and something to hold on to and to keep us fighting every day.
But Dr. Jeff Chato says he's seen a patient who almost died while being treated for Lyme disease when he didn't have it.
The child got a almost fatal overwhelming infection from bowel bacteria, which is a complication of too much prolonged use of antibiotics.
Scott Chant's family hopes his submission to the inquiry wasn't in vain and that some of the new senators will take up the fight.
He just really outlined his suffering and everything he'd been through, and it just gives you a really true insight into what he went through for the last 3 years. And part of me is so happy that he's not suffering anymore. We miss him more than anything.
Now, the current position of the Australian Health Department is that there's no conclusive evidence of the organism, the Lyme organism, existing in Australia, and so that's what leads to problems diagnosing it. So what it's tried to do is recommend a number of research projects so that they can try to get to the bottom of this. In the meantime, of course, the suffering of these people, whatever is causing it...
you don't have what you think you have, and it's all in your head. And
yeah, but whatever the clinical arguments about this are, and what the doctor said at the end there is actually really important, because the argument doctors will always put is, if we have no evidence this exists and we treat it as though it is Lyme disease, we cause huge damage, cause huge harm. So I think doctors are being really sincere about this, but of course that doesn't mean that the suffering of these people isn't real, and the psychological suffering as well isn't real. So if you're in that position and you need any help in times of crisis, then contact Lifeline on 13 11 14.